Line 3 is wrong.
Then solve it.
Then solve it.
Security must be letting anybody into Harvard now. Professor Charles Harrington said it without turning around. The chalk stayed in his hand. The proof stayed on the board. And the room, packed with 300 people, went so quiet that Maya Bennett could hear the old radiator ticking beneath the windows. She was standing in the back row. Black woman, 24 years old, plain gray coat, worn leather backpack pressed against her hip. 4 hours of bus travel still sitting in her shoulders. She had not slept much. She had eaten dinner the night before from a paper bag in a motel room, 6 miles from campus. But her eyes were steady. She had raised her hand because line 3 was wrong. Not slightly unclear. Wrong. Professor Harrington finally turned. He looked at her the way a man looks at something tracked in on the bottom of a shoe. "Let me guess," he said. "Community college?" A few students in the front row laughed. Not loud at first. Just enough to give each other permission. Maya did not move. A graduate student beside her closed his notebook, picked up his bag, and shifted 2 seats away. His face stayed blank, but his body had already voted. Another student lifted a phone, slowly, pretending to check a message while aiming the camera at her. Across the aisle, a young woman whispered, "Who even let her in?" Professor Harrington heard it. He liked that he heard it. His mouth curved, but there was no warmth in it. "You smell like a long bus ride," he said. "Sit down before you embarrass yourself further." The words landed hard. Not because Maya had never heard cruelty before. She had. She had heard it in admissions offices where smiles closed faster than doors. She had heard it in academic interviews where people praised her resilience, but questioned her fit. She had heard it in grocery lines, buses, waiting rooms, and anywhere poor black women were expected to be grateful for silence. But here, inside a Harvard lecture hall, the cruelty wore a tweed jacket and had tenure. That made it sound respectable. Maya's fingers tightened around the edge of her notebook. Her thumb pressed into a page filled with equations so small and neat, they looked almost stitched into the paper. In the second row, Ethan Caldwell, Harrington's favorite doctoral student, turned halfway around. He did not laugh. That almost made it worse. His expression was careful, curious, a little embarrassed, but not brave. No one was brave. 300 people sat inside that room, surrounded by polished wood, portraits of dead white men, and framed words about truth and excellence. And not one person said, "Let her speak." Not one. Professor Harrington tapped the board with the chalk. "Now, as I was saying," he continued, as if Maya had been nothing more than a cough in the back of the room. Maya looked at the proof again. Line 1 was clean. Line 2 followed. Line 3 carried the error. A negative sign had been distributed across a binomial, but the second term had not changed correctly. It looked small, almost harmless. The kind of mistake a tired undergraduate might make at midnight. But this was not harmless. That sign changed the inequality in line 5. That destroyed the bound in line 8. And that meant the conclusion Professor Charles Harrington had just presented with the confidence of a king was built on sand. Maya felt her breathing slow. In her backpack was a folder no one in that room knew about. Inside it were copies of her rejected doctoral applications. 6 polite letters, 6 locked doors. Beside them was a printed email from Dr. Diane Lawson at Princeton, the only senior scholar who had read Maya's unpublished paper and written back with one sentence. "If you are ever in the same room as power, do not shrink." Maya had carried that sentence from Washington, D.C., to Boston like a match in her pocket. Now the match was burning. She raised her hand again. This time the room saw her do it. A murmur moved through the seats. Professor Harrington stopped writing. His shoulders stiffened. Slowly he turned. There was irritation in his eyes now. Not surprise, not yet. He still believed he was dealing with someone beneath him. "Fine," he said. "Make it quick." Maya stood straighter. Her voice was calm. "In line 3, when you distributed the negative sign, the second term should be positive, not negative." The room held its breath. Maya kept going. "That changes the inequality in line 5, so the bound in line 8 does not hold." She looked at the board, then at him, and the proof fails. For one long second, nobody moved. The chalk dust hung in the air between Maya Bennett and Professor Charles Harrington like smoke after a gunshot. The old lecture hall seemed to tighten around them. 300 people looked at the board, then at Maya, then back at the board again. Professor Harrington smiled. It was the kind of smile men use when they are trying not to bleed in public. "An interesting observation," he said. His voice was smooth, controlled, too smooth. He turned toward the board and tapped line 3 with the chalk. Tap, tap, tap. The sound cracked through the silence. The sign is reversed there, yes. But it does not materially affect the conclusion. Maya heard the lie as clearly as she had seen the error. So did half the room. A young postdoctoral researcher near the front, Dr. Melissa Grant, lowered her eyes to her notebook. She began writing fast. Not notes, checks. Her pen scratched across the paper in short, urgent strokes. 2 rows behind her, another student leaned forward and whispered, "Wait, it does affect it." His friend shot him a warning look. Not here, not him. Ethan Caldwell stared at the board. His jaw shifted. He had spent 4 years learning under Harrington. He knew the professor's habits. He knew his brilliance. He also knew the proof had just cracked open in front of everyone. Ethan picked up his pen. That small act mattered. Others followed. One notebook opened, then another, then another. The room filled with the sound of paper, pens, breath held too long. Harrington watched it happen. For the first time that morning, he was not teaching the room. The room was judging him. Maya sat down slowly. Her face did not change, but her pulse hit hard in her throat. She had not wanted a performance. She had wanted the truth to be seen. That was all, just seen. But truth in rooms like this always came with a cost. A few seats away, Tasha Reed leaned toward her. Tasha was another visiting auditor, 25. A public school math teacher from Baltimore with tired eyes and a navy blazer that had been pressed too carefully. She spoke without moving her lips much. "Girl," she whispered, "do you know what you just did?" Maya kept her eyes forward. I corrected a proof. Tasha let out a breath that was almost a laugh, but not quite. "No, you corrected him." At the front, Harrington's hand tightened around the chalk until it snapped. A small white piece fell to the floor. No one laughed now. That was the difference. Before, cruelty had been entertainment. Now, silence had weight. From the judges' table at the side of the hall, Dr. Diane Lawson watched Maya with quiet intensity. Diane was 52, a Princeton professor, one of the few black women in the country to hold a named chair in number theory. She had spent her own life being mistaken for assistants, secretaries, guests, anyone except the person with the most credentials in the room. She knew that posture. The straight back, the quiet face, the refusal to beg. Diane opened her leather notebook and wrote 2 words. "Watch her." Harrington turned back to the audience. "Well," he said, forcing warmth into his voice, "this is why we value discussion." No one believed him. He continued the lecture, but the rhythm was gone. His writing slowed. He corrected line 3 without looking at Maya. He moved around the damaged proof, like a man stepping around broken glass. The students followed, but differently now, not worshipfully, carefully. Maya felt the shift. It was small but real. The same people who had looked through her were now stealing glances at her hands, her notebook, her face. They were trying to understand how someone they had dismissed had seen what they missed. That was the lesson they did not want. Talent does not always arrive wearing the right jacket. Truth does not ask permission from power. And intelligence does not become less real because it traveled by bus. When the lecture ended, chairs scraped against wood. Voices rose, low and nervous. Nobody rushed to Harrington like they usually did. His circle formed slower, thinner. Maya packed her notebook into her worn backpack. Then a shadow fell across her desk. Ethan Caldwell stood there, holding his notebook against his chest. For a moment, he looked younger than 27. "You were right," he said quietly. Maya looked up. He swallowed. About the proof. Behind him, Ryan Mercer watched from the aisle, arms crossed, face tight with resentment. He wanted to say something sharp, something that would put the room back the way it had been. But the room had already changed. Maya zipped her backpack. "Thank you," she said. Ethan nodded once and stepped away. Tasha rose beside her. You leaving? Maya looked toward the front of the room. Professor Harrington was staring at her now. Not with contempt, with calculation. No, Maya said. Her voice was low. I came here for the competition. The registration table opened at 8 the next morning. It stood outside the main lecture hall, covered with a navy cloth and a small brass sign that read Harrington Distinguished Competition. Behind it sat 2 department assistants with laptops, badge printers, and the tired patience of people who had already answered the same question 100 times. Maya Bennett joined the line without speaking. Around her, graduate students compared notes, shook hands, and laughed in the careful way ambitious people laugh when they know important faculty might be listening. Their voices bounced off the marble floor. Their shoes looked expensive. Their badges looked familiar. MIT, Stanford, Princeton, Columbia. Maya's badge said visiting auditor. Ryan Mercer saw it before she reached the table. He was standing with 2 friends near a coffee urn, paper cup in hand, smiling like he had been waiting for her. Well, look at that, he said. The auditor came back. One of his friends smirked. The other looked down at his phone, pretending not to hear. Ryan stepped closer. You know yesterday was a fluke, right? Maya looked at him. He took a sip of coffee. People catch typos all the time. That does not make them mathematicians. The words were quiet, clean, meant to cut without leaving a mark. Maya did not answer. That bothered him. He wanted anger. He wanted fear. He wanted her to defend herself so he could call her emotional. Instead, she moved forward with the line. At the table, the younger assistant glanced at Maya's badge and hesitated. You are registering as a competitor? Yes. The assistant looked at the screen, then at the printed rules beside the laptop. Open enrollment includes registered lecture participants and approved auditors, Maya said, before the woman could object. Section 2, paragraph 3. The assistant blinked. Then she checked. Maya was right. Behind her, someone gave a low laugh. Not mocking this time, surprised. The assistant typed her to Maya Bennett, she said. Howard University alumna? Yes. The older assistant looked up at that. Her face softened just a little. My niece went to Howard, she said. Good school. Maya's shoulders loosened by half an inch. Very good school, she said. The badge printer clicked. A new card slid out. Competitor. The word looked small in black ink, but Maya stared at it longer than she meant to. Tasha Reed appeared beside her, holding her own auditor badge. You really did it, Tasha said. Maya clipped the badge to her coat. No, she said. I just signed a form. Tasha shook her head. Sometimes that is the first door. Across the hall, Professor Harrington watched from beside a tall window. Morning light cut across his face, leaving one eye bright and the other in shadow. Dean Robert Whitman stood near him, silver hair combed neatly, hands folded over a leather portfolio. You opened the field to auditors, the dean said. That was generous. Harrington smiled without looking at him. Scholarship should be tested. His eyes stayed on Maya. And some people need to learn the difference between noticing an error and doing original work. The dean did not respond. He had spent enough years in administration to recognize a blade hidden inside polite language. At 9, the competitors entered the hall. The solving stations had been arranged in a semicircle across the stage. Whiteboards, markers, digital timers, cameras aimed at each board so the audience could watch every line on the large screens above. Maya took station 14. It was near the edge. Of course it was. Ethan Caldwell took station 3. Ryan Mercer took station 7. He looked over at Maya and raised his eyebrows, as if inviting her to finally feel out of place. She did. For one breath, she truly did. The lights were hotter than she expected. The room looked larger from the stage. Faces blurred into rows of judgment. Her hands felt cold around the marker. Then she remembered her mother's hands. Angela Bennett, standing at a bus station before dawn, pressing a folded 20 into Maya's palm, even though they both knew she needed it for groceries. You do not owe rich rooms your fear, her mother had said. You only owe God your best. Maya closed her eyes once, opened them. The first problem appeared on the screen. A combinatorics proof with a hidden constraint. Difficult, but fair. Markers began squeaking immediately. Ryan wrote fast. Ethan wrote faster. Maya did not move. 5 seconds. 10. A whisper moved through the audience. She froze. Ryan heard it and smiled. Maya kept staring, not frozen, listening. The problem was asking one question on the surface and another underneath. Everyone else was chasing the surface. Maya saw the hinge, a symmetry buried in the condition. Small, elegant, easy to miss. Her marker touched the board, line 1, line 2. Then the room changed. She wrote with calm speed. No panic, no wasted motion. Each step opened the next. The proof narrowed. The hidden structure came forward. By the time the timer reached 6 minutes, people in the front row were leaning in. Ethan stopped writing and looked at her board. Ryan's smile faded. Professor Harrington stood very still. Maya circled the final line. Then she placed the marker down. The timer still had 4 minutes left. For a moment, the only sound in the hall was the soft buzz of the overhead lights. Dr. Diane Lawson looked from Maya's board to Harrington's face. And quietly, almost to herself, she said, "There she is." The judges reviewed Maya's board twice. Not because it was unclear, because it was too clean. Dr. Melissa Grant stood near the stage with her arms folded, eyes narrowed, following each line in silence. The lead judge, an older professor from Cornell named Martin Ellis, adjusted his glasses and leaned closer to the monitor. "Step 4, he said. "She collapses the cases there." Melissa nodded. "Because the constraint forces symmetry. It is valid." Professor Harrington did not speak. He sat at the judge's table with one hand over his mouth, index finger pressed against his upper lip. It was a thoughtful pose, a professor's pose. But Diane Lawson saw the truth underneath it. His jaw was clenched. His pride had taken a hit. And pride, when it belongs to a man with power, rarely suffers quietly. The final scores for round 1 appeared on the screen. Ethan Caldwell, 92. Ryan Mercer's 88. Maya Bennett, 97. The number hung there. Large, bright, impossible to ignore. A sound moved through the hall. Not applause yet. More like disbelief learning how to breathe. Tasha Reed stood near the side wall, both hands over her mouth. She looked as if she wanted to cheer, but did not trust the room enough to do it first. Then Dr. Lawson clapped once, twice, measured clear. Dr. Melissa Grant followed, then a few students, then more. The applause rose, uneven at first, then steady enough to fill the hall. Maya stayed seated. She did not smile. Not because she was ungrateful, because she knew better than to mistake one round for safety. Ryan Mercer turned from the scoreboard to Maya. His face was red. He grabbed his notebook too hard, bending the corner. "Cute trick," he muttered as he passed her station. Maya looked up. Ryan stopped. For a second, all the noise around them seemed to pull back. "It was not a trick," she said. Her voice was quiet. That made it sharper. Ryan opened his mouth, then closed it. He wanted a crowd behind him before he spoke again. He did not have one. Ethan approached next. He moved slower, marker still in his hand, his brow creased with honest confusion. "How did you see it so fast?" he asked. Maya wiped her board with a cloth. "I did not see it fast. I saw what everyone else was stepping over." Ethan looked at the blanking surface of the board. Then he nodded, not fully humbled, but closer. At the judge's table, Harrington leaned toward the event coordinator, a thin woman in a black dress named Claire Donnelly. "Round 2 problem set," he said softly. "Use the alternate packet." Claire glanced at him. "The alternate packet is marked advanced." "This is a competition," Harrington said. "Not a charity." Claire's fingers tightened around the folder. She had worked in academic administration long enough to know when a rule was being bent without being broken. That was how men like Harrington survived. They rarely left fingerprints. "Yes, Professor," she said. Diane Lawson heard just enough. Her pen paused. Then she wrote the words alternate packet in the margin of her notebook. Outside the hall, during the break, competitors gathered around coffee and fruit trays. No one stood too close to Maya, but everyone looked. Their eyes carried questions they were not brave enough to ask. Where did she train? Who recommended her? How had they missed her? Maya poured coffee into a paper cup. Her hand shook slightly, only after the cup was full. Tasha noticed. She stepped beside her and took a napkin from the table. "You okay?" Maya stared into the coffee. "My mother is probably cleaning offices right now," she said. "She told 3 women at the bus station that I was going to Harvard." like it was already mine. Tasha softened. That is what mothers do. No, Maya said. That is what faith does when it cannot afford evidence. For a moment, the noise around them faded. The polished floor, the old portraits, the students pretending not to listen. It all felt far away. Tasha touched Maya's sleeve. Then give her evidence. The bell rang for round 2. Everyone moved back inside. This time, when Maya walked to her station, the room did not laugh. It watched. The second problem appeared on the screen. A proof statement in algebraic graph theory. Maya read it once, then again. Her stomach tightened, not because it was hard, because it was false. Around her, markers began squeaking. Ethan was already building a proof. Ryan wrote with aggressive speed, shoulders hunched, jaw set. Other competitors followed the same path, trying to force truth out of a broken statement. Maya stood still. Harrington's eyes locked on her from the judges' table. There it was, the trap. If she tried to prove it, she would fail. If she challenged it, she would look arrogant. The timer kept moving. 1 minute, 2, 3. The room began to murmur again. Ryan looked over and smiled. Maya picked up the marker. She wrote only 3 words at the top of the board. Counterexample to claim. The room went cold. Harrington sat forward. Maya drew a small graph beneath the words. Clean, simple, devastating. Then she turned to the judges. The statement is not true, she said. Her voice carried through the hall. And a false theorem does not become true because it is printed on Harvard letterhead. The room did not know how to respond to a sentence like that. Not in Harvard. Not from her. For a moment, the only sound was the timer ticking down on the screen. Red numbers. Cold numbers. Then Dr. Martin Ellis stepped forward, slowly, as if one wrong movement might break the air. Ms. Bennett, he said, please explain your counterexample. Maya nodded once. She turned back to the board and pointed to the small graph she had drawn. 6 vertices, 7 edges. Nothing dramatic, nothing decorative. Just the exact shape needed to expose the flaw. If the theorem were true, she said, this graph would satisfy the proposed coloring condition. But it does not. She marked 2 vertices. These 2 force the same color under the assumption. Then she marked a 3rd. And this edge makes that impossible. Her voice stayed even. Calm, almost gentle. That made it worse for Harrington. She was not attacking him. She was doing mathematics. That was harder to dismiss. Ethan Caldwell stopped writing. His marker hovered in the air. He looked from Maya's board to his own half-built proof and saw it immediately. His solution was not just incomplete. It was chasing a statement that could not be saved. He lowered the marker. Ryan Mercer did not. Ryan kept writing for another few seconds. Faster, almost angry. His shoulders tightened. His jaw worked side to side. Then he glanced at Maya's board. The color drained from his face. No, he whispered. But the graph sat there. Small, quiet, unmoved. Professor Harrington leaned toward his microphone. The purpose of this round, he said, is to test proof strategy, not to derail the exercise with technical objections. Diane Lawson's head turned. Slow. Sharp. A false statement is not a technical objection, she said. The microphone picked up every word. The room stirred. Harrington's eyes flicked to her. For the first time, irritation broke through his polished face. Dr. Lawson, I am aware of how mathematical exercises function. I am sure you are, Diane said, which is why I am surprised this one made it to the stage. Silence, a different kind now, not fear. Attention. Dean Robert Whitman shifted in his chair at the side of the hall. He had not expected controversy. He had expected donors, bright students, clean photographs, and polite applause. Now he was watching a visiting auditor expose a defective problem in front of cameras and invited guests. He leaned toward Claire Donnelly. Was this problem reviewed? Claire swallowed. The alternate packet came from Professor Harrington's office. The dean looked toward Harrington. His face did not change much, but his eyes did. Maya saw none of that. She was still at the board, marker in hand, waiting. Dr. Ellis reviewed the counterexample. Melissa Grant joined him. Their heads bent close together. They checked the edges, checked the coloring condition, checked the logic. 30 seconds. 40. Then Ellis straightened. The counterexample is valid, he said. A sound moved through the hall like air leaving a sealed room. Melissa spoke next. The statement is false. Ms. Bennett's response is mathematically correct. The timer was stopped. Ryan threw his marker onto the tray. Too hard. It bounced once and rolled off the edge, clattering on the stage floor. Everyone heard it. His face flushed deeper. "Are we seriously rewarding her for not solving the problem?" he said. Maya turned toward him. Ryan pointed at the board. "The rest of us tried to prove what was assigned. And that is why you were wrong," Maya said. "No anger, no insult, just fact." Ryan stepped forward. "You think you are better than everyone because you found a loophole?" Maya held his gaze. "No. I think a room full of smart people should be allowed to say when the premise is broken." That sentence landed deeper than the math. Tasha Reed closed her eyes for a second. She felt it in her chest. How many rooms had she sat in where the premise was broken? How many classrooms? Job interviews? Faculty meetings? Places where the rule was unfair, but everyone was told to keep solving anyway. Diane Lawson looked at Maya, and something in her face softened. There it was. Not just talent. Judgment. Moral courage, wearing the clothes of logic. The judges huddled at the table. Harrington did not join them. He stayed seated, fingers locked together, eyes fixed on Maya with a coldness that no longer bothered to hide itself. After several minutes, Dr. Ellis returned to the microphone. Round 2 will be scored on identification and justification of mathematical validity. Ms. Bennett receives full credit. The applause came faster this time, louder. Not everyone joined, but enough did. Maya stepped back from the board. Her knees felt wicklow-pastic now that the moment had passed, but she did not let anyone see it. On the screen, the updated scores appeared. Maya Bennett, 98. Ethan Caldwell, 74. Ryan Mercer, 0. The number beside Ryan's name looked brutal. He stared at it as if it had slapped him. Harrington rose from his chair. The applause faded. He leaned toward Dean Whitman and spoke low, but Diane caught the shape of the words. "We need to review her score." Dean Whitman frowned. "On what basis?" Harrington's smile returned. Thin, careful, competition integrity. Across the stage, Maya clipped the cap back onto her marker. She did not know yet that they were about to change her score behind closed doors. But Diane Lawson knew, and this time she did not just write it down. She opened her phone and started recording. The score changed during the lunch break. It happened quietly. No announcement, no explanation at first. Just a new ranking sheet taped to a board outside the lecture hall, where students gathered with paper plates, coffee cups, and the restless energy of people who knew something was not right. Maya Bennett stood near the back of the crowd. She had been eating half a turkey sandwich from the cafeteria, slowly, because food had become difficult to swallow. Then Tasha Reed touched her arm and pointed. "Maya," she said, "look." Maya stepped forward. The sheet listed the round 2 scores. Maya Bennett, 91. She stared at the number. Not 98. 91. Still high enough to continue. Low enough to remove the sting of her victory. Low enough to put Ethan Caldwell back within reach. Low enough to make her look less extraordinary. That was the cruelty of it. They had not erased her. They had trimmed her down. Around her, whispers began. "Wasn't she at 98? I saw 98. Maybe there was a penalty." "What penalty?" Ryan Mercer stood near the coffee table, arms cross-checked, his face calmer now. Too calm. He glanced at the sheet, then at Maya, then looked away with a small, satisfied breath. Tasha moved toward the registration table. "Excuse me," she said to Claire Donnelly. "Why was her score changed?" Claire looked up from her laptop. Her face tightened. The judges reviewed scoring consistency. "That is not an answer," Tasha said. Claire lowered her voice. "It is the answer I was told to give." Maya heard that. So did Diane Lawson. Diane stood a few feet away, holding her phone in one hand and a paper cup in the other. She watched Claire's eyes. The woman looked tired, not cruel, trapped. There was a difference, and Diane knew the weight of it. Maya stepped closer. "Who changed it?" Claire swallowed. "Professor Harrington requested a review." Tasha laughed once. Short, bitter. "Of course he did." Maya did not speak. She looked down at the score sheet again. Her mother's voice came back to her. Not loud, not dramatic. "Do not let people make you doubt what you know happened." That was the hard part. Not the insult, not the score. The hard part was the quiet rewriting of reality. The way power could take a true thing, shave off the edges, and hand it back smaller. Ethan Caldwell approached from the hallway. He had seen the sheet, too. His eyes moved to Maya's score, then to his own. Ethan Caldwell, 89. He frowned. "That is wrong," he said. Ryan heard him. "Careful," Ryan said. "You are starting to sound emotional." Ethan turned. "She earned 98. Ryan shrugged. Judges disagreed. "No," Ethan said. His voice sharpened. Professor Harrington disagreed. The small crowd froze. That sentence had crossed a line. Ryan's smile disappeared. Before anyone could respond, Professor Harrington appeared at the end of the corridor. He moved through the crowd with the calm of a man accustomed to people making room. His navy suit was perfect. His silver hair did not move. He looked at the score sheet, then at Maya. "Ms. Bennett," he said, "I understand you may have concerns." Maya looked at him. "I want the scoring explanation in writing." A few students glanced at each other. Harrington's eyes narrowed. "That is not standard procedure. Changing a score without notice is not standard procedure either." The hallway went silent. Claire stopped typing. Tasha's lips parted. Ethan stared at Maya as if he were seeing the full shape of her for the first time. Harrington smiled, but only with his mouth. "You are very confident for someone with very little institutional experience." Maya's throat tightened. He wanted to pull her back to where he thought she belonged. Outside the room. Outside the rules. Outside the language of power. But he did not know what Diane Lawson knew. He did not know that Maya had spent years reading not only mathematics, but policy manuals, fellowship rules, grievance procedures, and civil rights guidelines, because she understood something privileged students rarely had to learn. Talent opens doors. Documentation keeps them from being slammed shut. Maya reached into her backpack and pulled out a folder. Not thick, not dramatic. Just neat. Inside were printed copies of the competition rules, the university's non-discrimination policy, the public scoring criteria, and the email confirmation that auditors were eligible under the same standards as enrolled participants. She held the folder at her side. "I am asking for a written explanation," she said again. Under the published rules, Harrington looked at the folder. For the first time, something flickered across his face. Not fear, recognition. She was not just smart, she was prepared. Diane stepped forward then. "I would like a copy as well," she said. Her voice was calm, but the hallway shifted around it. Dean Whitman, coming from the faculty lounge, stopped mid-step. Harrington turned toward Diane. "Dr. Lawson, this is an internal matter." Diane looked at Maya, then back at him. "No," she said. "It became public the moment you posted the score." The dean's face hardened. "Charles," he said quietly, "provide the explanation." Harrington stood very still. The crowd watched. Maya held the folder. Diane held her phone. And in that narrow Harvard hallway, surrounded by marble and old portraits, power met something it had not expected from the woman it tried to shrink. A paper trail. The written explanation arrived 15 minutes before round 3. Claire Donnelly carried it down the hallway in both hands, as if the paper itself were heavier than it looked. She found Maya standing beside a window with Tasha, away from the crowd, away from the cameras, away from the polite little conversations that had started to follow her like flies. "Ms. Bennett," Claire said. Maya turned. Claire held out the document. Her fingers trembled. "I was asked to give you this." Maya took it. 1 page. Harvard letterhead. 3 short paragraphs. She read it once, then again. Her face did not move, but Tasha saw the change in her eyes. "What does it say?" Tasha asked. Maya handed it to her. Tasha read the first line and her mouth tightened. "Scoring adjustment based on unconventional response format," she said. "Are they serious?" Maya looked across the hall. Professor Harrington stood near the entrance with Ryan Mercer. Ryan was nodding at something, Harrington said, trying not to smile too much. Ethan Caldwell stood a few steps behind them, silent. His arms were folded, but his eyes were on the paper in Tasha's hand. He knew. Everyone who understood the round knew. Maya had not answered unconventionally. She had answered correctly. That was the problem. Diane Lawson walked over, slow and composed. "May I see it?" Tasha gave her the page. Diane read it. Her expression hardened 1 degree at a time. "This is not a scoring explanation," she said. This is language designed to hide one. Maya let out a quiet breath. For a moment, she looked younger than 24. Not weak, just tired. The kind of tired that comes from having to prove the same thing over and over. That you know what you know. That you earned what you earned. That your presence is not a mistake. Diane saw it. Her voice softened. Maya. Maya looked at her. Do not let them make you spend all your strength defending the truth before you get to use it. That landed gently. Like a hand on the shoulder. The bell rang. Round 3. Inside the lecture hall, the air felt different now. Sharper. The audience had grown. Word had spread across campus. Students stood along the walls. Faculty slipped into the back rows. A few people held phones low in their laps, recording without being obvious. The stage lights came on. Maya walked to station 14. The paper from Harrington's office was folded in her coat pocket, not hidden, saved. The screen lit up with the third problem. This one was hard, not broken, hard. A spectral graph theory problem with a combinatorial condition buried inside a matrix inequality. The kind of problem that rewarded training, patience, and the ability to stay calm while your own mind tried to run away. Ethan began first. Fast, controlled, elegant. Ryan started too, but his lines looked tense. Too much force, too little direction. Maya read the problem. Once, twice. Then the room seemed to fade at the edges. She could feel Harrington watching her. She could feel the weight of the altered score. She could feel every person waiting to see if she would finally become what they had expected from the beginning. A fluke, a story, a girl who had gone too far. Her marker hovered near the board. Nothing came. 10 seconds. 20. Ryan glanced over and smirked. Professor Harrington leaned back in his chair. There it was again, that small satisfaction. But Maya did not look at them. She looked at the matrix. Then the graph. Then the matrix again. Her breath slowed. A memory opened. She was 16, sitting on the floor of her mother's apartment in D.C., watching a lecture on a cracked tablet while rain tapped against the window. The professor on the screen had said something simple. When a problem refuses to move, change the room it is standing in. Back on the Harvard stage, Maya blinked. Change the room, not the graph, the space. She lifted the marker. Line 1 transformed the matrix. Line 2 exposed the hidden symmetry. Line 3 reduced the condition. The room leaned forward. Diane Lawson stopped blinking. Melissa Grant whispered, "Oh." Ethan paused mid-equation and turned toward Maya's board. He saw it. Not the full solution yet. The door. Maya kept writing. Faster now. Cleaner. Her hand moved with a steady rhythm, marker squeaking across the whiteboard. The proof built itself one careful stone at a time. No drama, no wasted flourish, just pressure, direction, truth. Ryan stopped writing. His board was crowded and confused. Maya's board was not. The timer showed 3 minutes left. Harrington sat forward. His mouth tightened. Maya reached the final reduction. She circled the conclusion. Then she stepped back. 2 minutes remained. The hall stayed silent for 1 beat. Then 2. Nobody clapped. Not yet. They were still catching up. Ethan set down his marker and stared at her board. His own solution was unfinished. Ryan looked pale. Dr. Ellis walked toward the monitor slowly, like a man approaching evidence. Diane did not look at the board anymore. She looked at Maya, because she understood the deeper thing now. Maya Bennett had not simply survived the trap. She had learned to solve under pressure without becoming cruel. That was rare. That was power. Professor Harrington understood it too, and for the first time, his face showed something close to fear. The judges did not post the round 3 score right away. That alone told the room something. Normally, results came fast. A review, a few notes, a number on the screen. But now the judges stayed in a tight circle near the table, voices low, shoulders angled inward. Professor Harrington stood apart from them, arms crossed, looking toward Maya's board, as if the equations had personally betrayed him. Maya remained at station 14. She did not sit. She did not pace. She stood with both hands resting lightly on the edge of the table, breathing through the pressure like she had learned to do years ago. In the audience, people whispered. She beat Ethan. Did she? Look at his board. He did not finish. Neither did Ryan. Ryan barely got halfway. Ryan Mercer heard enough to turn around. Maybe let the judges judge, he snapped. An older woman in the third row looked at him over her glasses. Maybe let the truth be obvious. The words were soft, but they struck him harder than an insult. Ryan faced forward again, humiliated into silence. Ethan Caldwell stepped away from his station and walked toward Maya. The room noticed. Harrington noticed most of all. Ethan stopped beside her board. He studied the last 5 lines, then the first 3, then the middle where the whole problem turned. "You changed the space," he said. Maya looked at him. "Yes." Ethan swallowed. His face held no smile now, no rivalry. Just the look of a man learning that humility can arrive late and still matter. "I would not have seen that," he said. Maya said nothing. He turned toward the judge's table. "She has the correct solution," Ethan said, louder this time. The hall went still. Harrington's head snapped toward him. "Mr. Caldwell," he said coldly, "you should let the panel complete its review." Ethan looked at his advisor. For 4 years, Harrington's approval had been the weather of Ethan's life. A nod could lift him. A raised eyebrow could ruin his week. He had organized his mind around pleasing that man. But something had shifted, not suddenly, not cleanly. Truth had been working on him all day. Ethan straightened. "I am not interfering," he said. "I am acknowledging the mathematics." That sentence did something to the room. A few people nodded. Dr. Melissa Grant looked up from the review table. Her eyes rested on Ethan for a second, then softened. She knew what it cost a young scholar to contradict his mentor in public. Diane Lawson saw it too. Courage was not always loud. Sometimes it sounded like a student finally telling the truth. Professor Harrington stepped closer to Ethan. "You may regret speaking before you understand the full context." Ethan's voice shook, but he did not look away. "I understand enough." There it was. The first crack inside Harrington's own circle. Dean Whitman rose from his seat. "Charles," he said, "step back." 2 words, quiet, administrative, final. Harrington froze. The dean did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The authority in it came from years of holding rooms together, before they turned into lawsuits, headlines, and institutional shame. Harrington stepped back. 1 inch. Then another. Dr. Ellis approached the microphone. The audience held its breath. "Round 3 results," he said. "After full review, Station 14 presents a complete and valid solution." No one moved. Then the screen changed. Maya Bennett, 100. A sound broke out before the applause. A gasp. Then a sharp clap from somewhere in the back. Then another. Then the hall rose into noise. Not polite applause this time. Real applause. Standing applause. Tasha Reed was on her feet first, wiping her face with the heel of her hand. Dr. Lawson stood next. Then Dr. Grant. Then half the room. Maya looked at the number on the screen. 100. For a second, it did not feel like victory. It felt like oxygen. She thought of her mother cleaning offices under fluorescent lights. Thought of the cracked tablet. The bus ride. The motel carpet. The rejection letters folded in her backpack like old wounds. And then she thought of every person who had ever been told they were almost enough, but not quite. Her eyes burned. She blinked once. The tears stayed back. Harrington did not clap. Ryan did not clap, but Ethan did. Slowly at first, then with both hands. That mattered more than Maya expected. The applause faded only when Dean Whitman stepped to the microphone. Based on cumulative scoring, he said, "The semifinalists are Ethan Caldwell and Maya Bennett." A buzz went through the hall. Everyone understood what that meant. The favored student. The woman they tried to shrink. 1 match. 1 stage. Harrington's face became calm again, but it was not peace. It was strategy returning. He leaned toward Claire Donnelly and whispered, "Use the restricted semifinal problem." Claire's face went pale. "That packet has not been approved by the full panel. It is from my seminar materials," he said. "It is appropriate." Diane Lawson, still standing, watched Claire's hand reach for the folder. And this time, Diane stepped into the aisle. "Before the semifinal begins," she said, her voice cutting clean through the room, "I want the source of the problem set entered into the record." Harrington turned slowly. The room went quiet again. Maya looked from Diane to Harrington. She did not yet know what was inside that folder. But she knew this much. The next trap was already being laid. Dr. Diane Lawson did not raise her voice. She did not need to. The room had already learned to listen when she spoke. I want the source of the semifinal problem set entered into the record, she said again. Claire Donnelly stood beside the judge's table, holding the folder against her chest. Her face was pale. Her eyes moved from Diane to Professor Harrington, then to Dean Whitman. Harrington's smile returned. Thin, educated, dangerous. This is highly irregular, he said. Diane looked at him. So is changing a score during lunch. A low sound moved through the hall. Not quite applause. Not quite shock. Recognition. Dean Whitman stepped forward. Claire, where did the semifinal packet come from? Claire's throat worked. She was not a villain. She was an employee with a mortgage, a supervisor, and a career that could be made miserable by one powerful man. Still, everyone was watching. She opened the folder. The packet was provided by Professor Harrington's office. Harrington cut in, as are many materials used in this event. Claire looked down at the top page. Her fingers pressed into the paper. It is marked Restricted Seminar Draft. The words hit the room like a dropped glass. Ethan Caldwell's face changed first, because he knew that phrase. He had seen those drafts. He had studied them in Harrington's private seminar. 8 students, closed door, invitation only. Maya had never been in that room. She had never even known it existed. Diane turned toward Ethan. Mr. Caldwell, she said, have you seen material related to this problem before? Ethan froze. Harrington's head moved just slightly. A warning without words. Ethan saw it. For a moment, the old habit almost took him. Please the advisor, protect the path, survive. Then he looked at Maya. She was standing at Station 14, still, quiet, not asking him for anything. That made the decision harder and cleaner. Yes, Ethan said. A few people gasped. Harrington's voice snapped. Ethan. Ethan flinched, but he did not stop. In seminar, he said, last month, we discussed a related lemma. The silence after that was different from every silence before it. It had teeth. Dean Whitman turned fully toward Harrington. Charles. Harrington lifted one hand. A related lemma is not the same as the problem. Advanced competitors are expected to adapt. Diane stepped closer to the table. Advanced competitors are expected to compete under equal conditions. Maya listened, heart hammering. There it was in plain language. Equal conditions. Such a simple thing. So often denied. The dean looked at the judges. We will not use that packet. Harrington's face hardened. Then the semifinal is compromised. No, Diane said. It is repaired. Dr. Ellis nodded slowly. We have an approved reserve problem. It was reviewed by the full panel. Harrington looked cornered now. Not defeated. Cornered. There is a difference. Defeated men lower their weapons. Cornered men hide them better. Dean Whitman gave the order. Use the reserve. The hall exhaled. Claire placed the restricted packet flat on the table, away from the judges, as if it had become evidence. Then she pulled a sealed envelope from a locked case. The approved reserve problem. No private seminar. No hidden advantage. No old door opened only for the chosen. Maya and Ethan took their stations. The screen changed. The semifinal began. The problem was brutal. A graph limit problem connected to probabilistic bounds. Fair but unforgiving. It demanded insight first, technique second. It gave nothing away. Ethan wrote immediately. Maya did not. Again. The audience understood now. Her stillness was not emptiness. It was search. She read the statement once, twice, then a third time. Ethan's marker moved fast. Clean lines. Good training. Real talent. For the first time all day, he was competing without a hidden hand on his shoulder, and he looked almost relieved. Maya felt that. It made her respect him. But respect did not mean surrender. She stepped to the board. Her first line was cautious. Her second line opened a path. Her third line stopped. Wrong direction. She erased it. Ethan kept writing. 5 minutes passed. Then 7. Maya's board held only half a structure. Ethan's board was nearly full. Ryan Mercer whispered from the front row, "There it is." Tasha shot him a look that could have cut paper. But Maya heard him. There it is. The failure they had been waiting for. Her hand lowered. For the first time, doubt found a real opening. Maybe she was tired. Maybe she had spent too much strength fighting the room. Maybe courage had a limit. Then she saw something on Ethan's board. Not an error. A doorway. He had chosen a standard concentration bound. It was correct, but loose. Too loose. The problem did not need force. It needed a sharper cut. Maya turned back to her board. Her breath slowed. She erased the top half. The audience murmured. Ethan looked over. Harrington leaned forward. Maya started again. New line, new frame, new attack. She replaced the bound with a coupling argument, then reduced the random structure to a deterministic core. The proof tightened. The noise in the room disappeared from her mind. There was only the board now. White surface, black marker. Truth emerging one line at a time. Ethan saw where she was going. His face changed. Not fear, admiration. He stopped writing. Damn, he whispered. Maya reached the final step with 30 seconds left. Her hand moved fast now. Too fast. The marker squeaked hard. The timer counted down. 10, 9, 8. She wrote the conclusion in the lower right corner. 5, 4, 3. She underlined it. 2, 1. The buzzer sounded. And before anyone could stand, before the judges could move, Professor Harrington walked to the front of the stage. He stopped directly in front of the lower right corner of Maya's board, blocking the final line with his body. Then he turned to the room. An impressive attempt, he said, but incomplete. Maya Bennett looked past Professor Harrington's shoulder. She could see the edge of her final line. Just a few black strokes at the bottom of the board. Enough to know it was there. Enough to know he was blocking it on purpose. The hall went quiet. Not confused quiet. Sick quiet. People understood what they were seeing before they could admit it to themselves. Dr. Diane Lawson stood first. Professor Harrington, she said, step aside. Harrington did not move. His smile stayed fixed. There is no need, he said. The solution lacks completion. Maya's hands curled at her sides. She wanted to speak. She wanted to shout. She wanted to walk over and move him herself. But she did not, because this was bigger than anger now. This was about the kind of power that hides truth by standing in front of it. Diane walked down the aisle, one slow step at a time. Her heels struck the wooden floor like a gavel. Step aside, she said again. Dean Whitman rose from his seat. Charles, one word. No warmth. No warning left. Harrington's eyes flicked toward the dean, then toward the cameras, then toward the audience. He understood. The room had changed beyond his control. Slowly, he stepped away. The final line appeared. Complete, clear, underlined. For one breath, no one made a sound. Then Ethan Caldwell stepped closer to the board. He read it once. His face changed. He looked almost wounded by the beauty of it. She finished, he said. His voice cracked. Dr. Ellis joined him. Melissa Grant came next. Diane stood beside them, arms folded, eyes hard. They checked the last step, then the step before it, then the whole chain. 30 seconds passed. 40. A minute. Maya could hear her own breathing. Finally, Dr. Ellis turned to the microphone. The solution is complete, he said. Not polite applause. Not academic approval. A release. A roar. People stood. Chairs scraped. Phones lifted. Tasha Reed cried openly, now both hands pressed to her face. Claire Donnelly wiped her eyes and looked away, as if shame and relief had arrived in the same breath. Maya did not move. The sound came at her from every direction, but she stood still, staring at the board that had nearly been stolen from her. Ethan turned to her. You won, he said. Maya blinked. The words entered slowly. You won. Not survived, not proved enough. Won. Dean Whitman stepped to the front, his face pale, with the knowledge of what Harvard had nearly allowed to happen under its own seal. Pending formal review, he said. Maya Bennett is the winner of the Harrington Distinguished Competition. Diane's voice cut in. No, she said, not pending. The room quieted. Diane held up her phone. I have the altered score discussion recorded. I have the restricted packet documented. I have the posted score change photographed. The semifinal solution is complete. The rules are public. The result is final. Dean Whitman looked at her phone, then at Harrington. Something in his face closed. You are right, he said. He turned back to the room. Maya Bennett is the winner. This time, the applause came with certainty. Harrington stood near the edge of the stage, stripped of the thing he valued most. Not his title, not his office, his unquestioned authority. And authority, once questioned honestly, is never the same again. The review that followed did not happen in whispers. It happened under policy, under documentation, under the eyes of people who had finally learned that silence protects the wrong person. The lecture series was suspended. Harrington lost control of the competition. The department opened a formal inquiry. The written apology came later, stiff and careful, but public. Maya read it once. Then she folded it away. Months later, 3 doctoral programs accepted her. She chose MIT. When Tasha asked why she did not choose Harvard, Maya smiled softly. Because I do not need to stay in a room just because I proved I belong there. Her mother cried when she heard that. Not loud, just quietly, at the kitchen table, one hand over her mouth, the other holding Maya's acceptance letter like it was something holy. Maya sat beside her and leaned her head on her shoulder. For a while, neither of them spoke. Some victories are not loud at the end. Some victories sound like 2 women breathing in peace after years of holding their breath. Maya's story traveled farther than she ever expected. Not because she embarrassed a powerful man, but because she reminded people of something simple and necessary. Respect is not a prize for the privileged. Truth does not need permission, and no one should have to look rich, familiar, or approved before being heard. If this story moved you, like this video, subscribe for more stories about courage and justice, and comment these 3 words below. Never stay silent.